So my son came from yeshiva today, and he had some shilas to me, some questions. And the questions were of the following nature. Was it possible, theoretically, to cheat the system and get more than allocated one Omer of Manna in the midbar? And he also came up with some very interesting suggestions and ideas of how he thought it could be possible to cheat the system. And so I thought to myself, this is a great question, and let's see and explore what the Chazal have to say about it, and what our Mefarshim have to say about it, and maybe figure it out. So, let me share with you one of the most fascinating puzzles in the Torah. For 40 years in the wilderness, our ancestors lived on manna, a food that defied everything we know about nature, economics, and physics. This wasn't just a temporary miracle. It was Hashem fundamentally restructuring the relationship between humans and sustenance, teaching us bitachon, absolute trust in divine providence. The Torah tells us in Shemot, gather of it every man according to his eating, and Omer for every man according to the number of your persons. Take every man for them which are in his tents. All right, that's a loose English translation. So now, here's where it gets interesting. The Torah describes a miraculous equalization. It says, and the children of Israel did so and gathered some more, some less. And when they measured it with an Omer, he that gathered much had nothing over, and he that gathered little had no lack. They gathered every man according to his eating. So here's the question I want to explore with you today. Could someone have cheated the system? What if you ate the manna right in the field while you were gathering before you measured it in your tent? Could you eat your fill out there, then bring home your fill full Omer for dinner? Could you essentially get unlimited manna in the field plus your official portion? To answer this, we need to look at what our Mefarshim have taught us from the early Rishonim to the late Achronim, even in the Hasidic thought, and we'll explore what gathering really means versus eating, the spiritual biology of the manna and the nature of this miracle. What we'll discover is that the manna wasn't just a resource to exploit, it was a relationship to experience governed by divine logic that made cheating not only wrong, but actually impossible. How the miracle worked, right? How this whole equalization worked. First, let's understand the mechanics. How exactly did this equalization work? Could someone eating in the field get around it? Rashi, quoting the Mechilta, explains it simply but profoundly. It was a miracle that happened regarding it. No matter how much effort you put in, whether you gathered huge piles or just a little, whether you measured it in your tent, when you measured it in your tent, everyone had exactly the same amount. Think about this, what this means. One pile shrank, another expanded. Rashi is telling us that Hashem fixed the result regardless of human input. So if Hashem controlled the final amount to ensure equality, wouldn't he control the intermediate amounts too? Any manna you ate in the field would likely be subtracted from your final total, or your appetite itself would be limited to match what Hashem allocated. The Malbim goes deeper. He points out that the whole experience was designed to teach us that our economic well-being is entirely in Hashem's hands. The key phrase is lefi ochlo, according to his eating. The miracle wasn't just about volume, it was about satisfaction. The verse says, he that gathered little had no lack. The Malbim suggests that even if you try to cheat by eating in the field, you hit a wall of being satisfied. The manna was perfect food. It satisfied precisely. You literally couldn't eat more than an Omer because your body would reject it, or you'd find no pleasure in it once you'd met your quota. The Netziv, in his Hamik Davar, offers another fascinating angle. He questions how a standard Omer could work for both a large adult and a small child. He proposes that the Omer might not have been a fixed volume for everyone, but rather adjusted to each person's needs. For a child, an Omer meant their full portion. For a large man, it was the same volume but provided different satiation. If the Omer represents satisfaction rather than just volume, then eating in the field doesn't help you. The moment you reach your personal Omer of being satisfied, whether in the field or in your tent, you'd be physically unable to consume more. You'd just be filling your quota early. The Khatam Sofer takes this personalization even further, suggesting the Omer dimensions might have been calculated based on each person's own body measurements. Hashem provides exactly what you need based on your physical dimensions. If you try to beat the system by eating in the field, you're fighting against something calibrated specifically to your biology. The legal question, is this stealing? Now let's look at this from a halachic perspective. Was eating in the field just a procedural violation or something more serious? In Jewish law, a worker harvesting produce can eat from the crop while working. This is the law of toil found in Devarim. The verse allows a worker in vineyard or grain field to eat, quote, to his fill while laboring. So could you argue that the Jewish people were workers employed by Hashem to gather manna and therefore entitled to eat while gathering? This was the idea of my son. He said, can I maybe eat in the field and then what I gather I bring home, and I never got my Omer, but I already consumed additional amounts in the field. Here is why that doesn't work. First, ownership rights. The poil eats because the Torah grants rights to the worker from the owner's crop. But here, the crop belongs to Hashem. Lechem min hashamayim, bread from heaven. The specific command, gather an Omer, acts as a restrictive covenant that overrides the general poil allowance. Hashem, as the employer, set specific terms. Take an Omer, not eat as you work. Second, poil laws apply to growth of the land. The Sforno notes that gathering manna was a test of trust, not typical agricultural labor. Third, poil laws let a worker eat grapes or grain as is, but manna required processing. Bamidbar describes grinding, pounding, and boiling it. The raw manna was like hard coriander seed. You couldn't just snack on it in the field without tools. The Brisker of takes a different approach and gives us another framework. We need to distinguish between the status of the object and the obligation of the person, what we call hefza versus gavra. Is the one Omer limit a restriction on the person? You may not take more. Or is it a definition of the object? The manna available to you is one Omer. According to the Brisker understanding, it's the latter. The Omer is the definition of the manna's very existence relative to you. The miracle, quote, he had nothing over, implies the manna itself was adaptive. It physically couldn't exist in a quantity greater than an Omer per person. So someone eating in the field faces an ontological barrier, not just a legal one. The manna you eat in the field counts toward your portion. If you consume a fifth of an Omer, the universe only contains 4/5 of an Omer left for you to gather. You can't cheat because the one Omer is the totality of manna existence allocated to your soul for that day. The biology of manna, why you physically couldn't cheat. Here's where it gets really interesting. The Gemara in Yoma, about 75, the Ayin has Aleph, Amad Aleph, tells us something remarkable. Manna was lechem abirim, bread of the mighty, or bread absorbed by the limbs. It produced no waste. Think about what this means. Normally, You can eat more than you need because your body expels the excess food. But manna, it integrated permanently into your body. If manna doesn't pass through you, your body is like a vessel, just like the jar in your tent. Eating an Omer in the field fills the body vessel. Trying to eat more would be like trying to overfill a bottle that's already full. The limit of one Omer was probably the maximum capacity of a human soul/body interface to absorb divine light and nutrition in a 24-hour period. Sfas Emes takes this even further, viewing manna as a form of internalized Torah or das, knowledge. Can a student cheat by learning more than their brain can hold? No. They simply forget or fail to absorb. Someone who ate in the field beyond their capacity wouldn't absorb the manna. It would be a wasted blessing. It would melt or vanish even inside them because the vessel, the soul, determines the intake, not the mouth. The Hiskuni comments on the complaint in Bamidbar, our souls are dried out, suggesting people felt something was wrong because they didn't eliminate waste. This confirms the no waste reality caused psychological distress. A person eating in the field to get ahead would only accelerate this feeling of being filled but not satisfied. They'd feel physically heavy but existentially empty. The wicked versus the righteous. The Gemara in Yoma distinguishes between the righteous, the average, and the wicked regarding how they receive the manna. The righteous found the manna at their doorstep, ready to eat like fresh bread. Average people went out together and made cakes. The wicked had to go far, and for them it required grinding and beating. Now, someone trying to cheat Hashem's system shows a lack of bitachon. They probably fall in the category of the wicked or faceless. And here's the consequence. For the wicked, the manna wasn't ready to eat bread. It was hard, raw coriander seed that needed grinding, pounding, and boiling. So practically speaking, you can't easily snack on rock hard seeds in the field. To eat it, you'd need to bring a mortar, pestle, and a cooking pot into the field, grind the manna, and cook it. All the while, the sun is getting hot and the manna is melting. As the Torah tells us in Shemot, it is logistically impossible. The wicked person trying to cheat would find themselves standing in the scorching sun, trying to chew inedible raw material, while the righteous sat in their tents eating fresh bread. The Kli Yakar frequently critiques the desire for excess. He links the complaints about the manna to desire for the flesh pots of Mitzrayim, material excess over spiritual sufficiency. The person eating in the field is driven by taiva, gluttony, desire. The Kli Yakar suggests that Hashem's response to such desire is often to grant the request but remove the blessing, as we saw with the quail. The cheater might succeed in eating, but the food would become loathsome or harmful, turning the extra, quote, food into a curse rather than a benefit. Shemot contains the phrase that seals this completely. He that gathered much had nothing over. Lo chidit chamor ben. The phrase is absolute. It doesn't say he had nothing over in his basket. It says he, the person, had nothing over. The miracle likely worked retroactively. The divine accounting system viewed your total acquisition for the day. Let's say Dan eats 2/5 of an Omer in the field, then gathers 2 full Omers in his basket. His total attempted acquisition is 2.4 Omers. When he measures his basket in the tent, he finds exactly 0.06 Omers. Total realized 0.4 in his stomach plus 0.6 in his basket equals 1 full Omer, not 2.4. The miracle ensured that your total daily intake plus possession always equaled 1 Omer. The manna gathered in excess simply vanished or shrank to accommodate what you already consumed. The Hiskuni emphasizes that manna was a lesson against hoarding and anxiety about the future. The prohibition of leaving manna until morning means the consumption cycle had to be completed within 24 hours. If you ate in the field to stock up, you're trying to consume tomorrow's hunger today. But manna is daily bread. You can't store manna in your stomach for tomorrow any more than you can store it in a jar where it it breeds worms. Your body burns the energy, and the new day requires new mana. The cheater gains no advantage for the future and only disrupts their trust in the present. The only exception is Shabbat, where a double portion Lechem Mishnah fell on Friday. On these days, the limit expanded to 2 Omers. The fact that the limit could expand proved the 1 Omer restriction wasn't about physical capacity to carry more, but a specific divine setting for weekdays. You couldn't hack the system. Only Hashem could alter the parameters for Shabbat. Another interesting question, is it theft from Hashem? In Tehillim, the manna is called food of the mighty. The Gemara in Brachas tells us, he who enjoys this world without a blessing is like one who steals from Hashem. The manna belongs to Hashem until it's given to you through the proper channel, gathering and measuring. Since the limit is set at 1 Omer, taking more is taking what wasn't given. So it is theft, right? What we call gezel. But Ben Ish Chai links food consumption to spiritual elevation. Eating without the proper framework, without the blessing, without the measurement, degrades the sparks of holiness. The manna eaten in the field, consumed in a state of theft, is a lack of trust, would fail to provide the spiritual sustenance that was manna's primary function. It would sustain the body only to condemn the soul. Also, the Omer isn't just a cup, it's a temple measure. The manna is kept before the testimony. Measuring with 1 Omer conferred a status of Kedusha upon the food. Food eaten in the field, unmeasured, would lack this certification, hashgacha. It would merely satisfy a biological urge, distinct from the mitzvah of eating manna, which connects the Jew to the divine world. The field eater gets calories but misses the mitzvah. So in conclusion, why this loophole is impossible? So after this comprehensive research and analysis, we see that manna wasn't a physical resource subject to manipulation. It was a divine interface of faith. Our sages collectively paint a picture of a closed, divinely regulated system where cheating is a category error. The manna was quantified for satisfaction. The Omer was a limit of the soul's capacity to receive. The provision was calibrated to your individual need. Eating in the field simply filled your quota early. Since the manna was fully absorbed, no waste, your body acted as a permanent storage. Filling it in the field prevented filling the basket for your tent. The equalization miracle was retroactive and total. It accounted for all manna you acquired, whether consumed in the field or carried in your jar. The divine accounting subtracted what was in your stomach from what appeared in your basket. For those lacking emunah, the likely cheaters, the manna required process.
No caller.